Scythe versus Expeditions. Well, they use the same money, so they must be the same game. Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we are going to take on one of the biggest debates in board gaming right now, and that is which post-apocalyptic steampunk game is better, Expeditions or Scythe. Before we get to my personal opinion, I want to go over some of the similarities and differences between the two games so you guys can be better prepared to make your own decision. One of the biggest similarities between the two games is the overall objective of the game, and that is placing out your glory, or putting the stars out on the various victory condition markers here, and then scoring off of those based on other attributes once the game is over. So here's the kind of glory track for Expeditions. This is the glory track for Scythe. Scythe, you're putting out 6 stars. Here you're putting out 4. So, this is a smaller track, but it requires less stars to win. But then once you have placed your stars, you're going to be gaining coins based off of how many quests you've completed, the items you've upgraded, the tiles that you've vanquished. Whereas over here in Scythe, you can see we're gaining money based on our popularity for our stars, territories we control, and resources we have at the end of the game. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting stars onto this board and then how much money have you accrued. At their core, both games are action selection games. So this is a player board in Scythe, this is a player board in Expeditions. Each one, you are essentially choosing the action that's going to tell you what you're going to do on your turn. In Scythe, you're going to take this marker here and you're going to put it on one of these 4 columns. And at the beginning of the game, you pretty much can only do what's at the top, and the actions are minimal in nature. Your turn is going to be extremely quick, and the next time you're going to have to do something different. As the game goes on, however, you're going to be able to upgrade your board, moving these squares from the top of the board, which will give you better benefits from taking those actions, and moving them to the bottom of the board. You don't have to stay in the same region like this, making the stuff on the bottom of the board cheaper. So you're benefiting 2 actions at once. You're improving a top action and making a bottom action more efficient. So this is a lot of the draw to Scythe, is how you go about deciding to improve your board and change how your actions are taken throughout the game. Whereas on our board over here, I'm going to borrow a token, you are essentially choosing which action you're going to cover up and take the other 2 actions. Here you eventually are taking 2 actions. Here you are always taking 2 actions, but there's always one you have to block. But then there's only 3 actions you can take. Even with Scythe, there's only 4, but once you make it to the factory, you will be able to add a 5th action that is unique just to you. So the actions are more prolific over here, much more simplified over here. Both games utilize asymmetrical player powers. So in Expeditions, each of your individual mechs, which is essentially your player token here, has different powers, and those are going to be listed down here on the box. Each mech has a different look and feel to it. Also, your starting character and companion, which represent your starting 2 cards, cover the basic actions of solve and vanquish to make sure you always have those in your under your control, but then each one is uniquely different in the other attributes that they're going to give you. So this is how they mix it up with player powers here. Over here you have your again, a hero and a companion that move around together. They're not 2 separate cards, but their board gives you an asymmetrical player power listed up here, and then each of their mech abilities gives you different powers. So as you're putting mechs onto the board, you're unlocking unique powers specific to you. And each setup is wildly different as well, from starting power to starting combat cards. And then you even add in the different boards, which are essentially the same thing, but they, say for example here, the trade action is above the deploy a mech action. And here, the bolster action is above the deploy mech action, and you actually gain 3 coins when you deploy a mech, whereas here it's different. Both of these starting setups are different with the amount of popularity and coins you get to start with. So there is a lot more choices to make as far as which faction to go with, and your asymmetrical powers, making you very different in Scythe versus the asymmetrical powers here in Expedition. One of the biggest differences between the two games is how the board or map is laid out. Scythe, it is a static board. If you, for example, like this particular faction, you're always going to start on this side of the board. This is going to be your starting area, and everything's going to be to this side of you. Whereas in Expeditions, especially the central and northern tiles, they're going to start face down and be mixed up, so you don't quite know where everything is, where all of your action spots are. So that's going to make a big difference. Exploration is definitely a component in Expeditions, whereas it's not so much in Scythe. The most obvious mechanic for Expeditions that Scythe does not even have is the card play. So having a hand of cards is something that you have in Expeditions that you basically just don't even have in Scythe. So other than your starting character and companion, you're going to be picking up things like items, you're going to be picking up things like meteorites, and you're going to be picking up quests. These quests, you can go to specific locations, complete the quest, tuck it under your board here. Items, you can go to the upgrade area, an area that it gives you the capabilities to upgrade, and you're going to slide them under here and gain that benefit permanently. And then meteorites, you can meld and slide under here, which is going to gain you just raw victory points or money for melding them based on certain conditions. All of these cards are multi-use in the fact that you can play them to gain the 2 main resources, power and guile, but also then place workers on them to gain additional actions, or you can then lock them into your player board, just how we discussed, to gain different benefits. So card play is the action selection, and then card play is the main mechanic for Expeditions, and that's just something that Scythe doesn't have. So in Expeditions, there's almost 0 player interaction, other than the fact that if somebody's on a location, you cannot visit that location. They're essentially blocking you, and someone could beat you to a card that you had your eye on. Scythe, on the other hand, has a lot of player interaction. You are fighting over territories. You're racing for the factory. You can, steal people's resources. The biggest player interaction inside is the combat. So in combat, you're essentially taking your power that you have built up and you're spending a certain amount of it, up to 7. So you're going to secretly, spin this dial here, and then you're also going to have combat cards, which, depending on how many units you have in the battle, determines how many of these you can play. These are also a secret only to you, and you're going to tuck a certain number of these in here as well. And this is going to give you your total. Let's say you bid 4 and then have a 5 and a 2. So in this instance, your total power for the combat is 11, and this person may do the same, and they might say do a 6 and 2 2s, and so their total combat is 10. It's a very simple, very quick system, but the fact that you can attack other players, you can invade other players inside, steal their resources, take over their territory, makes this a very, very different game as far as player interaction is concerned. Again, in Expeditions, there's almost no player interaction. for my solo players out there, this is going to be probably the biggest selling point in the game for you, and that's the complexity of the Automa. Both of them provide Automa from the Automa factory. Both of them are extremely well done, and there are some similarities. First of all, essentially, the skill level of the Automa here, the Automata is easy, and this is level 1. The Mezzanite is essentially a timer. They're going to be, you're going to be moving this cube based on, in Expeditions, it's going to be this symbol. In Scythe, it's going to be this symbol. Every time you see that symbol, you're advancing the cube, and then when you hit the stars, the Automa is just placing out stars. It doesn't matter what category they go on to, but if they get to the end of their track, essentially they've triggered the end of the game. So both of them serve as a timer. But in Expeditions, where there is very little player interaction, they essentially do everything another player might do for you. But to control the Automa, it is very, very simple. This broom symbol is going to sweep up or clear out some of the cards, bringing in new ones, and then they're essentially either going to be taking away the map tokens, exploring those tiles, meaning you can't get the map token, or they're going to be vanquishing these tiles here that, again, if you do, that's a victory condition. If you get to 7 of them, also it's unlocking various additional abilities underneath, and then they're just moving around, sitting on a spot, meaning you can't go to that location on your next turn, and there's 2 of them. So in a way, it's almost like playing against 2 opponents, but not quite. They're both kind of building up towards a single score. But the Automa here is incredibly easy. Sometimes does feel very automatic. They're just kind of moving in this single parade route line and getting in your way. Here, the Automa is incredible. It really does feel like they're spreading out their influence, and they're building up their power, and they're moving to attack you. But there's also a lot more going on these cards. So just for reference, this is the Automa reference card for Expeditions. It's a single card, one-sided. These are the reference cards for the Automa in Scythe. It's a whole collection of them. They are just one-sided, but there is a card for every single action symbol you might see in the game. Whereas here, there's just a single card for the entire Automa. Also for Scythe, you're going to have level 1, and then at a certain point in each game, it's going to flip over to the level 2 side, which helps them ramp up, become more difficult towards the end of the game. They've built up their engine. And also there's a third use or a second use for these. Anytime you battle, you're going to turn the card sideways, and so that changes up their statistics for battling. So again, this is a really well done, highly touted Automa system, but is far more complicated than this one. So if you are looking for a simple Automa system, Expeditions. If you are looking for a, looking for something close to a human player, here you go. Also, with Scythe, you can play multiple Automas. You can either purchase another Automa deck to flip through, or they have the deck online. There are apps that will just show you what card would be next, making it very simple to play, say, a 3-player game of Scythe solo, playing against 2 Automa bots. So at the end of the day, which game reigns supreme? Well, I think a lot of that depends on what type of game you're looking for. Before I give you my opinions on which game I think is best for you, let me just cover a few things that I haven't gotten to yet in my comparisons. And one is the complexity and the length or time length of the game. And I think that the instruction manuals are excellent ways to show that off. You can see that Scythe here is a bigger manual than Expeditions. This is 32 pages long. This is exactly half at 16 pages long and a smaller manual. They both play to 1 to 5 players, but this one is 60 to 90 minutes, whereas this one is a solid 115 minutes, and it could go up from there. Both are competitive. Both, I'm pretty sure, are in the 13 to 14 plus range. Both have a solo mode. So, what is my recommendation, you might ask? Well, I think that depends. If you're looking to purchase just one of these for the first time, what is it you're looking for? Are you looking for a resource and territory controlling game where there's going to be combat involved, similar to a dudes on a map, these big epic battles, lots of moving parts on a board, lots of choices, lots of different ways to make yourself unique from the other players? Scythe is your answer. Scythe is also the proven champion here. Scythe has been around longer. There's several expansions. There's a campaign for Scythe. There's a legendary box. Okay? Expeditions, however, is a much easier game to learn and get into. Also, this is a game with very little player interaction. You just kind of go out and you do your own thing, hopefully getting to your end game goals faster than the other players. Or not even faster, but doing a better job of, making those end game goals worth more points than everyone else. So if you're looking for a game that doesn't have all those take that elements, a game that's going to play quicker, take up less space on your table, not much, they're both kind of table hogs, but this one does take up less table space, one that involves exploration and a unique board each time with some asymmetrical player powers, Expeditions is the way to go. Now, another question I have heard and one I asked myself: if I own Scythe, is Expeditions worth it? And I would say 100% yes, because this is a sequel to Scythe. If you are a fan of Scythe, then I think you are either, Scythe is either too much for you or you're a fan. So if you're a fan of Scythe and you have a copy of Scythe, Expeditions is like a love letter to Scythe. It's invoking those same feelings that you get when playing Scythe, you get from playing Expeditions, and it's a new experience. The card play feels very different. The corruption tokens and how you go about upgrading your player board versus upgrading your player board here, and the various kind of navigating your supply of worker meeples in their various colors, and your hand and when to refresh and things like that. There's a lot of different elements here in Expeditions that make it a very different game from Scythe, but it is set in the same universe. The artwork is there. You're diving back in to that post-apocalyptic, Cold War, Russia, I don't know what other words to use to describe this, but if you're familiar with Scythe, you know the type of artwork I'm talking about. You're getting that from Expeditions. So it's just diving back in. It's a different experience. It's a different game, different gameplay. I literally, got my copy of Expeditions. I played it several times, went through all, making the videos of it, and then I turned around and played Scythe to prepare myself for this video, partly, but because playing Expeditions made me hungry for playing Scythe. So you can't get too much of this world, in my opinion. And I think that Expeditions is an excellent addition to your collection if you already own Scythe. If you don't own either one, consider what you want. Big, epic, dudes on a map, long, complicated game where there's a lot of take that and player interaction elements, or do you want a quicker game that's less player interaction, more about exploration and card play, and you just doing what you need to do to accomplish your goal? Two very different games. You can go out and make your opinion. Me personally, Scythe is still the king, but Expeditions is a great start, and Scythe has a lot of years underneath it to keep it being the king. We'll see what Expeditions has for us in store in the future, because judging by the size of the box, we definitely have some expansions on the way, so I look forward to those. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer them. I have a whole suite of videos on Expeditions, so go and check those out if you're want to see what's in the box, how to rebox it, how to play, or even a full solo playthrough is going to be up on the channel very soon. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.